In 1962 in Pike County, Kentucky, a father was slapped with a $200 fine right in the middle of his daughter's wedding. The charge? Serving homemade country ham. That meat had hung for 18 months in the smokehouse his grandfather left behind. To the health inspector, it was non-compliant. To his family, it was a legacy. For 2 centuries, Appalachians sustained themselves on smoke, cold springs, and pure survival instinct. But then, in the span of a single generation, those flavors began to quietly vanish. When did self-sufficiency become a sin? Join us as we seek out the last remaining flavors of the mountains before they fade away forever. Anyone living in Appalachia before electrification knew that the greatest enemy wasn't wild beasts, but spoilage. Cash was a luxury, but the land was bountiful provided you knew how to master it. In these parts, the kitchen wasn't a hobby, it was a food engineering system forged out of isolation. 20. The Springhouse. Before the hum of air compressors, mountain folk tapped into the earth's lifeblood. A springhouse is a small stone structure built directly over a cold water spring. Here, milk, butter, and fresh cheese weren't kept on plastic shelves. They were submerged in running water that maintained a consistent 52 degrees Fahrenheit, 11 degrees Celsius year-round. The milk took on a faint mineral hint from the mountain stone, and the butter retained its natural, sweet suppleness, never tainted by the metallic tang or the stale scent of an industrial fridge. It was an elegant cooling system, zero electricity, maintenance-free, and functioning perfectly for 150 years. Today's food safety laws mandate that perishables be stored below 41 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 degrees Celsius under constant electronic monitoring. To health inspectors, the Springhouse isn't a legacy, it's an uncontrolled biohazard. 19. Sun-dried apples on tin roofs. In September, when the sun still bites but the first hint of chill touches the air, the tin roofs of mountain homes transform into massive dehydrators. Mountain women would spread clean white sheets across the scorching tin, scattering thin slices of apple, what they called snits. The tin absorbed the solar heat, holding steady at around 120 degrees Fahrenheit, 49 degrees Celsius, slowly wicking away moisture while locking in the concentrated natural sugars. A 40-cent bushel of apples in 1955 could sustain a whole family through the winter, finding their way into stack cakes, pies, or morning bowls of oatmeal. Those bags of dried apples hanging from the rafters were energy troves during the long, snow-covered month. Modern USDA dehydration standards demand precise temperature-controlled equipment and documented surface sanitation protocols. The sun, regardless of its efficiency, can never be granted a certificate of food safety. 18. Stone Crock Kraut. In a corner near the hearth, a heavy ceramic crock was a kitchen staple. This was the laboratory for the magic of lactobacillus. Cabbage was shredded, bruised with salt, and pressed down with a clean river stone. That stone did more than just apply pressure. It established a perfect anaerobic environment, allowing lactic acid bacteria to thrive and produce the acidity that wipes out pathogens like E. coli or salmonella. This kraut is far from the harsh, biting sharpness of industrial vinegar. It has a deep, living tang, a vital lifeline of vitamin C when the mountains have turned gray and dormant. While science confirms that this acidic environment is incredibly safe, cottage food regulations in many states still outlaw the sale of home-fermented kraut unless it's produced in a commercial kitchen with digital pH logging. They trust the readout of a meter more than the weight of a river stone. 17. Wood-Ash Hominy. Perhaps the most sophisticated chemical feat performed without a degree is wood-ash hominy. Appalachian women would sift fine hardwood ash into boiling water to create a natural lye solution. When dried corn is simmered in this mixture, it triggers a process known as nixtamalization. The alkalinity of the ash helps slip the tough outer hulls and, crucially, unlocks the niacin, vitamin B3, a nutrient otherwise bound within the kernel. Without this step, a corn-heavy diet would lead to pellagra, a devastating and often fatal nutritional deficiency. Wood-Ash Hominy possesses a tender chew and a smoky, nutty richness that the industrial canned variety can never replicate. These mountain grandmothers understood food chemistry long before the term even existed. In Appalachia, smoke is more than just a byproduct of fire. It is a culinary ingredient, a preservative, and the very soul of survival. Without the smokehouse, a mountain winter wouldn't be a season of rest. It would be a death sentence. 16. The smokehouse. Inside the smokehouse, strips of bacon, links of sausage, and whole hams hang from the rafters like wooden bells. The dirt floor is cracked, with a small, smoldering fire pit at its center. This is where a silent chemical battle takes place. Salt draws every drop of moisture from the muscle fibers, while hickory smoke laden with natural phenolic compounds coats the meat in an absolute antimicrobial shield. A single smokehouse could hold up to 300 kilograms of meat, enough to sustain a family for an entire year. It required no freezer and no electricity, only patience. Today, a traditional smokehouse violates at least 14 FDA regulations, ranging from the permeable dirt floors to the lack of electronic temperature monitoring systems. In 2018, a man in Tennessee was fined $4,000 and forced to demolish a smokehouse his family had used since 1879. A century of wisdom vanished in a single afternoon, buried under the weight of sterile bureaucracy. 15. Country ham. A close-up of a country ham, its exterior a rugged mahogany crust. The surface is dusted with a thin layer of white mold that locals call the bloom. This isn't the watery, bland ham you find in a supermarket. Appalachian country ham is dry, salt-cured, and dense with a texture akin to an aged Parmesan. When sliced, it reveals a deep, translucent crimson, carrying notes of chestnut and seasoned wood smoke. In 1955, a laborer could buy a fresh ham for 90 cents, cure it for 18 months with salt, sugar, and mountain air, and emerge with a $15 treasure. That was how the poor built wealth. The elders say that modern ham no longer tastes of the wind. Current USDA mandates require meat to be aged in climate-controlled facilities under fluorescent lights. The hams that once breathed the Appalachian air are now nothing more than a memory. 14. Outdoor apple butter. A massive copper kettle sits perched over an open wood fire in the yard. The entire family, from the youngest children to the elderly, takes turns manning a long wooden paddle to stir a thick, dark brown mixture. Making apple butter isn't a solo task. It requires 14 hours of relentless stirring. This was once a time for the youth to court, the elders to share stories, and the entire community to weave itself together. The rhythmic scrape of the paddle against the copper bottom, the scent of cinnamon mingling with the wood smoke, it creates an atmosphere no factory could ever replicate. Today, open fire cooking is deemed a health violation in 43 states due to uncontrollable temperatures and the risk of ash contamination. Apple butter festivals now rely on propane burners and stainless steel vats. The recipe remains the same, but the soul of the ceremony has vanished with the wood smoke. 13. Outdoor lard rendering. For bakers, home-rendered lard is the gold standard for creating a perfectly flaky, multi-layered pie crust. It has a lower melting point than butter and carries a delicate, smoky undertone. The very fat your grandmother rendered for free in the backyard is now coveted by high-end chefs as a premium artisan ingredient. Today, rendering lard outdoors is banned for commercial sale because it cannot guarantee an enclosed environment. We have traded this perfect fat for bland industrial vegetable oils in exchange for safety that exists only on paper. 12. Hog Butchering Day. A frosty November morning where breath freezes in the crisp air. 6 families gather, working side by side since before the sun has even broken the horizon. This isn't just about the butchering, it's a labor barter. No money changes hands, you pay with the work of your own 2 hands. Every family leaves with a share of meat to sustain them through the winter. Modern meat inspection laws classify the sharing of uninspected meat as unauthorized commercial distribution. Technically, gifting a slab of ham to a neighbor living a mile down the road is a federal violation. The law views the sharing of food as the distribution of a commodity, but in Appalachia, it is an act of humanity. Appalachians never viewed the forest as a separate entity. It was an extension of the larder. When the final winter stores in the smokehouse began to dwindle, the deep woods opened their doors. This is where the wildest, most pristine flavors reveal themselves, the kind that cannot be bought with a credit card, but can only be traded for with mountain wisdom and miles logged on foot. 11. Ramps. Ramps are spring's first gift. After a long winter of salt pork and dried beans, the pungent kick of ramps delivers a jolt to the palate and provides the essential vitamins the body craves. It carries the flavor of garlic and onion, but far bolder and more untamed. Once considered a poverty food, ramps have transformed into a luxury ingredient in high-end New York and Nashville kitchens, fetching upwards of $20 a pound. This market obsession has led to overharvesting. Today, foraging for ramps is banned in many national parks and strictly governed by permit systems. What was once a free survival food for mountain folk is now guarded by park rangers and fines reaching as high as $5,000. 10. Poke salad. The poke plant is notoriously toxic, yet Appalachians transformed it into an iconic staple. The secret lies entirely in the technique. The greens must be harvested while young and parboiled 3 times, discarding the water after each round to leach out the phytolactotoxin. After the 3rd boil, the leaves are sautéed in lard with eggs, yielding a flavor as bright and delicate as a cross between spinach and asparagus. Today, the commercial sale of poke greens for human consumption is illegal in all 50 states. The FDA classifies the plant strictly as a natural toxin. The wisdom of how to tame this poison is dying with the grandmothers, as modern regulations leave no room for the margin of error inherent in such a manual ancestral process. 9. The pawpaw. The pawpaw is North America's largest native fruit, boasting a tropical profile that tastes like a lush cross between a mango, a banana, and a pineapple. They grow wild across Appalachia and were once a cherished source of free, seasonal sustenance for mountain families. Yet, despite their abundance in the wild, you'll almost never find a fresh pawpaw in a supermarket. The reason? They are notoriously delicate. Their short shelf life and custard-like texture make them ill-suited for the rigors of industrial packing and long-distance shipping. Furthermore, harvesting pawpaws on public lands for commercial gain is a federal offense. A sweet, nutrient-dense fruit that grows in your own backyard has been relegated to a niche luxury reserved only for those who know the spot and know the law. 8. Wild mushrooms. For decades, foraging for wild mushrooms provided mountain families with the vital side income needed for their children's school books. Trading a basket of fresh morels for a handful of cash right at the local gas station was a common sight across Tennessee and West Virginia. Today, in 40 states, restaurants are strictly prohibited from purchasing wild mushrooms from foragers who lack a state-certified mushroom expert or mycologist license. While these laws were enacted to prevent accidental poisoning, they have effectively dismantled a 200-year-old free market tradition, turning seasoned foragers into food smugglers overnight. 7. Turtle soup. Mountain folk say that turtle meat contains 7 flavors, ranging from beef and pork to the delicate taste of fish. It is a dish that sustained soldiers during the Civil War and kept families alive through the Great Depression. Because turtles are slow-growing and prone to mercury bioaccumulation, commercial harvesting is now banned or strictly limited in 17 states. Once the proud centerpiece of Sunday family dinners, turtle soup has been relegated from a culinary tradition to a strictly regulated wildlife product. 6. Squirrel brain gravy. Not every vanishing tradition is a victim of absurd regulation. Squirrel brain gravy was once a cherished delicacy in Kentucky, where the brains were stirred into a thick white gravy and served over hot biscuits. In the late 1990s, however, medical researchers discovered a chilling link between this dish and a variant of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, CJD, a neurodegenerative condition that is 100% fatal. This serves as a sobering reminder that not every safety rule is an enemy. There are some flavors that truly must be left behind to protect the living. The disappearance of this dish marks the definitive boundary between blind nostalgia and biological reality. In mountain kitchens, there are no certificates hanging on the walls, only the sacred trust between the cook and the eater. But as soon as that food crossed the ridgelines and descended from the hollows into the marketplace, the state intervened. They came armed with digital thermometers, HACCP plans, and rigid protocols. From that moment on, dishes that were once the very breath of the highlands began to transform into mere lines of violation in an inspector's logbook. 5. Sassafras tea. Sassafras tea is the quintessential spring tonic. Locals believed it helped thin the blood after a long winter of heavy, salted foods. It is also the ancestral heart of American root beer. In 1976, the FDA banned safrole, the aromatic compound found in sassafras, after a study showed it caused liver cancer in rats at extreme dosages. Toxicologists later argued that those doses were equivalent to a human drinking 80 cups of tea every day for a decade. Nevertheless, the ban stands. Selling traditional sassafras tea, or old-fashioned root beer, is now a federal violation, forcing beverage companies to pivot to bland, synthetic imitations. 4. Moonshine vanilla. Genuine vanilla extract demands a minimum alcohol content of $35%. Appalachian folk, ever the pragmatists, turn to the purest, highest proof moonshine from their neighbors to infuse their beans. The result was a vanilla extract more robust and aromatic than anything found on a grocery store shelf. Yet, this practice is a flat-out violation of federal liquor tax laws. The IRS has historically prosecuted the elderly simply for using untaxed spirits to flavor the cakes and pies they donated to church bake sales. In the eyes of the law, a single drop of moonshine in a vanilla jar isn't a culinary secret, it's a loss in tax revenue. 3. Home canning. Home canning is a badge of honor for mountain women. However, the threat of botulism from improperly canned green beans is a grim and lethal reality. To ensure absolute safety, modern laws now ban the sale of low-acid home-canned goods like beans and corn at farmers' markets unless they are processed in licensed commercial kitchens. County fairs, once a showcase of preservation skills, are now dominated by factory-made jams and jellies simply because they are the easiest to permit. Canning artisans who spent 40 years winning blue ribbons have walked away, weary of the red tape that has turned a community tradition into a bureaucratic nightmare. 2. Mountain spring water. Mineral-rich mountain spring water is the secret ingredient behind the distinct sweetness of Appalachian cornbread and coffee. Modern regulations in many states prohibit food service establishments from using unverified or non-municipal water sources. The overhead for periodic lab testing, certifications, and the installation of filtration systems can soar upwards of $4,000 a year. As a result, many small family-run diners have been forced to switch to chlorinated city tap water. Patrons might not notice the shift immediately, but the terroir, the very soul of the land carried in every drop of spring water, has quietly evaporated. 1. Black walnuts. Black walnuts are a far cry from the mild English variety found in most stores. They are bold, earthy, and distinctly pungent. For decades, they provided mountain children with a vital source of pocket change every autumn. Today, the sale of hand-shelled black walnuts is strictly curtailed. Regulations demand that the nuts be processed in USDA-approved facilities to mitigate the risk of contamination. A child with a hammer on a porch, once a symbol of industriousness, is now classified as a health hazard. As a result, the walnuts are largely left to molder on the forest floor. The cost of legal compliance has simply outpaced the humble market value of the harvest. When a traditional dish is branded as a hazard, it doesn't just vanish from the menu, it fades from our collective memory. We are witnessing the erosion of a unique form of wisdom, a way of understanding the world that needs neither a digital screen nor a federal stamp of approval. The severance of seasonal rhythms. Mountain food was once a perfect circle of time. Each month offered its own unique gift, and missing the harvest meant facing a lean winter. Today, we consume the same static selection of food year-round from supermarket shelves. Safety and convenience have blurred the temporal map of the kitchen. When food is detached from the soil and the cycles of the sun, we lose our profound connection to the heartbeat of nature. We are no longer eating the seasons, we are merely consuming a supply chain. The stolen sensory world. The invisible flavors have vanished. The honest bite of real hickory smoke, not its liquid substitute, the mineral resonance of spring water in cornbread, and the wild, indigenous microbes living within aged clay crocks. These are sensory experiences that no machine can replicate. When everything is standardized to be safe for the masses, we trade the jagged peaks of exceptional flavor for a landscape of bland uniformity. In our quest to eliminate every risk, we have accidentally sterilized the soul of our food. The knowledge gap. The secrets of Appalachia aren't found in textbooks. They are etched into the hands. It is the intuition to read the rising bubbles in a fermenting crock to gauge acidity, to hear the specific sizzle of lard to judge temperature, or to catch the scent of the mountain air to know exactly when a country ham has reached its peak cure. Modern regulations demand charts, logs, and data points, but you cannot log the feeling of 300 years of ancestral wisdom. When the law loses faith in the grandmother's intuition, the chain of oral tradition snaps. The next generation is relegated to being passive consumers rather than masters of their own environment. The paradox of luxury. There is a cruel irony at play. While the humble smokehouses of the poor are raised for health code violations, the elite are obsessively chasing anything labeled artisan, wild fermented, or locally grown. The law hasn't destroyed these techniques, it has simply moved them behind a paywall. If you have $30,000 to build a certified commercial kitchen, you can sell artisan kraut. If you don't, your grandmother's lifelong skill is a public health hazard. Appalachian cuisine is being gentrified, stripped away from the very people who created it as a means of survival. Most of these dishes didn't vanish because we stopped loving them. They vanished because the world that birthed them has ceased to exist. The smokehouses have gone cold, the mountain springs have been shackled in plastic, and the keepers of the secrets are retreating into the long shadows of time. We are not here to romanticize poverty, nor do we ignore the silent threat of bacteria. Many of these laws were written in blood, and they have undoubtedly saved lives. But we must ask ourselves, what happens when safety standards engineered for industrial factories are forced upon the fragile landscape of family heirlooms? As the final wisp of smoke drifts away, we aren't just losing a flavor. We are losing the ancestral memory of what it means to be a free human being, the quiet power of stepping onto your own soil and sustaining your own life without the need for a government permit. Thank you for walking this path with us as we sought out the forbidden flavors of Appalachia. Do not let the last embers go cold. Subscribe to Nostalgia Cookery to help us keep tracing the fading pulse of a culinary heritage that is quietly slipping away.